Further debate, I recognize a member from York South-Weston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise this morning to speak to the bill before us, Bill 230, Frontline and Essential Worker Week Act. And frontline and essential workers are those retail workers, grocery staff, truck drivers, healthcare workers, transit drivers, and educators, just to name a few. These are the folks that deserve so much thanks and a praise for essentially keeping our province operating and during the COVID pandemic. The Premier has called these workers champions, heroes, and they are truly they are. Do they deserve a week recognizing their selfless efforts and personal risks they took to their own health along with their family's health? Absolutely. 100%, of course. Frontline workers deserve recognition, and the official opposition has stood in this House for months and months asking for their recognition in the form of paid sick days, full-time work with benefits, WSIB coverage, and proper wages, and the ability to bargain without a Ford government-imposed wage freeze. We want to recognize essential workers by providing PPE and safety and health concerns needed as they have put themselves at personal risk. This bill mentions none of those things. It does declare a week to acknowledge the work they continue to do, and I am all for that. But, Mr. Speaker, who would not support that kind of recognition for the very folks that have kept Ontario moving during the pandemic, who have contributed enormously to our economy in difficult times? Of course, I can stand and say, give them that recognition. However, gestures are all well and good, but this government has failed at every step in our COVID recovery strategy. They routinely rejected our bills and motions calling for tangible methods to actually provide essential and frontline workers with the assistance they need. Mr. Speaker, this government seems to be badly out of touch with those champions, heroes they speak about, and are apparently clueless on how their day-to-day lives really are. Let me paint the picture for them for an average BSW, essential worker, frontline worker in York South-Weston. This average worker works in a long-term care as a BSW and earns around just over $17. This is part-time employment with no benefits, and the person is often a female and racialized and living in crowded conditions due to affordability of housing. They work 2 part-time jobs in 2 different workplaces to get close to full-time hours. Traveling to these workplaces on overcrowded buses and often having to make more than one connection is the reality of their very long day. Then they arrive for work in for-profit long-term care that is drastically understaffed, and they do the very best they can. On average, the ratio is 30 residents per home and 4 PSWs to provide care. They return to their families physically and emotionally exhausted, day after day after day. And in York South-Weston, the designated hotspot and high risk of transmission, they have spent the past 15 months dealing with initially no permanent COVID testing facility and no permanent vaccine facilities. This is the essential worker reality in our community of York South-Weston. So when I see a bill such as this declaring a week to tip our hat to them, I know full well we can do so much more. Just this week, the government passed a bill regulating BSWs. The government stated time and again that this what BSWs told them they needed. Well, Mr. Speaker, does the government in their heart really believe that the typical BSW whose life experience I described? When I asked When ASK is saying the biggest help they could get is to be regulated and to be given a week of recognition. Clearly not. They need real paid sick days. They need pandemic pay for every essential worker, retroactive to the beginning of the pandemic. An immediate $5 hour raise is needed for PSWs and full-time jobs instead of part-time, not benefits. These essential workers had to fight for access to proper PPE during the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, this government can do so much more to honour and acknowledge the work of essential employees. Time and again, the government has fallen short, and their reaction to the pandemic has always been weeks behind and a day late and a dollar short. The pandemic has been a difficult struggle, and it has devastated communities. I believe history will not be kind to this government when they see the inaction and outright neglect in how it has dealt with and strategized around a COVID response. This last week, as the government recesses for the summer, they leave not with a bag, but with a whimper, as regulating PSWs and declaring Essential Worker Week is the best they can offer to the hard-working, decent essential workers and frontline heroes and champions. So much more could have been done, but the suggestions of the official opposition were dismissed, unions and community organizations were not listened to, and the government-owned science table was ignored. Families in Ontario see this, Mr. Speaker, and the government will have to live with the regrettable and unfortunate decision they have made during this pandemic. And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.